Good morning, sisters, brothers, and comrades. My name is Kelly Dick, and I'm the president of the Waterloo Region Labour Council. I will be your MC this morning for our new format, which will include a panel discussion with some of our workers from right here in our own community. I would like to start out this morning with our land recognition, if I may. We will begin the Day of Mourning event by acknowledging that the Waterloo Region Labour Council meets on Aboriginal lands that have been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. As settlers, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Long before today, as we gather here, there have been Aboriginal peoples who have been the stewards of this place. In particular, we acknowledge the Haldimand Tract, a traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada and Haldimand treaties. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic connection to this place. We also recognize the contributions of Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples have made both in shaping and strengthening this community in particular, and our province and country as a whole. As settlers, this recognition of the contributions and historic importance of Indigenous peoples must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities, and in particular, to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across our country. On behalf of the Council, I would like to welcome you here today to observe our National Day of Mourning for those workers who have been injured, fallen ill, or have lost their lives on the job, and to the families of those workers who are also impacted by workplace injuries, illness, and death. This year marks the 42nd anniversary of the creation of our province's Occupational Health and Safety Act, where workers achieved hard-won health and safety regulations for industrial, construction, and mining establishments, as well as WSIB regulations, sustained funding for the Workers' Health and Safety Center, and the occupational health clinics for workers. We've seen dramatic improvements in confined space regulations. We've gained changes to the criminal code, and we've included workplace health and safety violence policies within our working environment. Mandatory certification for joint health and safety committees, and most recently, training standards for workers working with heights. Recent setbacks with the Ford government in 2018 moving forward, and the introduction of Bill 66, which saw the repeal of the Toxic Reduction Act. We lost improvements to employment standards governing hours of work, and intentions to reduce basic certification training for certified health and safety representatives. Employers are no longer required to post on the board the rights of workers. They are, however, still required to provide the employee with the information either online or in writing. Workers at any age starting a new job, specifically young workers under the age of 25, are 3 times more likely to be injured during their first month of work. In 2008, from 2008 to 2017, an estimated 60,000 workers died on the job as a result of harmful workplace exposure, with WSIB allowing only 3,013 death claims. That same period, 3.1 million workers were injured on the job as a result of harmful workplace exposure, with only 1.8 million claims being reported by workers. We definitely can do better. We have some guest speakers with us here today. I'd like to introduce them now. We have the Mayor of Kitchener, Barry Vervanovic. We have the Mayor of Waterloo, Dave Jaworski. And we have the Mayor of Cambridge, Catherine McGarry. We also have with us today, Karen Redmond. Thank you for coming and thank you for participating with us today.
I join you today in setting aside some time to honor and remember those who have been killed or seriously injured in the workplace. The international observance on April the 28th as the Day of Mourning began here in Canada, but after the declaration, there's over 100 countries that now observe this as a day of remembrance. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the people of Waterloo Region, the people who are playing a crucial role in keeping our community running during this global health crisis. This includes a massive public health response that our whole community can be proud of. We're also keeping our paramedics on the road, maintaining programs for our most vulnerable and homeless citizens, keeping our buses and trains running, caring for seniors at Sunnyside Home, and keeping crucial infrastructure like roads, bridges, and water treatment plants operational and safe. Waterloo Region's many healthcare providers are working around the clock to keep us safe and are responding in this extremely challenging health crisis. These frontline workers are being exposed to COVID-19 every day as they go about continuing to work to keep us safe and healthy. There are also thousands of people in our community who are making sure that we have food, medicine, and other essential supplies. I want to give a heartfelt thank you to our grocery store clerks, pharmacists, truck drivers, gas station attendants, and coffee shop staff. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing for all of us. These members of our community are indispensable. What we are learning at this crucial point in our human history is that we're all indispensable. We have a role to play during COVID-19 pandemic. Risk is an inherent element in many jobs. This is why safety is one of the core values in the workplace. Protecting workers is a community responsibility. Every one of us that goes into the workforce should return home to our families safely and in good health. On behalf of Waterloo Region, I urge all of us to take care of each other, to reflect upon those who have been killed or seriously injured in the workplace during the International Day of Mourning, and to be relentless in our quest to protect our neighbors. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Waterloo Mayor Dave Jaworski. Today, April 28th, is the Day of Mourning, a day that shouldn't have to exist. Everybody who goes to work deserves the right to go home safely. At the City of Waterloo, we've recently completed a health and safety assessment to help identify the city's strengths and areas of improvement. Our hazard and incident reporting system is now more proactive, so we can correct workplace hazards to protect visitors and our employees before accidents happen. We've also enhanced our early and safe return to work policies so that people can come to work when they can and be safely accommodated in new roles if needed. With that, I'd like to thank you all for commemorating all of our fallen comrades today on April 28th, and let's hope for a future where we don't need the state.
Hello, I'm Mayor Catherine McGarry. I bring greetings from the city of Cambridge. The annual Day of Mourning is a solemn time where we pause to remember workers who died over the past year in their workplaces. This year, as we all face the COVID-19 virus, the stakes are even higher. I encourage everyone to thank healthcare, food store, delivery, and community workers for all of their hard work in helping us to stay healthy, fed, and safe. We must do all we can to ensure that they stay safe and well, too. These are unsettling and fearful times for many workers and their families. We must all honor their efforts by practicing physical distancing and staying at home if we can. That helps protect them and our community as well. We owe it to them and all workers to do everything that we can to help them come home safe and sound every day of the year. Remember, we're all in this together.
Hello, Kitchener. Today, flags are lowered at Kitchener City Hall to commemorate the Day of Mourning, a day when we honor and remember those killed, injured, or made ill in the workplace, and to renew our commitment to prevent such tragedies from occurring again in the future. Normally, we would gather at the memorial in one of our 3 cities for the annual Day of Mourning commemoration organized by the Waterloo Region Labour Council. The COVID-19 situation doesn't make that possible, but the need to gather is more important than ever this year. And so I thank the Labour Council for organizing a virtual commemoration. As we reflect on the most recently reported statistics from 2018, we know there were 228 total traumatic fatalities as reported in Ontario. And we know there were countless workplace-related injuries or illnesses, ranging from sprains or falls on construction sites to assaults on childcare or home support workers. Each and every one of these statistics has impacted not only the worker, but every worker represents somebody's child, life partner, parent, or relative, somebody's friend. And so, even one death or one injury literally impacts dozens, if not hundreds, of other people connected to that worker. This year, the need to focus on workplace safety and the ensuing illnesses, injuries, and fatalities has never been more relevant than right now as we collectively battle the COVID-19 pandemic. Each day over the past several weeks, we have heard about the issues concerning inadequate or limited PPE for healthcare workers, first responders, and many working in critical services. We have heard about the 223 healthcare workers locally who have contracted COVID-19 here in Waterloo Region. And sadly, we have also heard about those in Canada and elsewhere who have lost their lives due to contracting COVID-19 while caring after others. As we pause today to remember all those who have been made ill, were injured, or gave their lives, let us renew our commitment to ensure people have the safety supplies they need for their roles. Let us ensure everyone has the training they need to properly fulfill their roles. And let us all do everything we can to ensure that everyone who goes to a workplace returns home to their loved ones at the end of their work shift.
Thank you so much to our local leadership for speaking today and being here with us on our National Day of Mourning. I would like now to observe a moment of silence. If you would participate with me, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce a guest speaker from the building trades. His name is Greg Bobier to say a few words for us. Thanks for joining us today, Greg.
Welcome as we gather to mark the International Day of Mourning. My name is Greg Bobier. I'm the business manager of the Waterloo, Wellington, Dufferin and Gray Building and Construction Trades Council of Ontario, or yourlocaltrades.ca. The building trades is comprised of over 12,000 proud men and women of the unionized construction sector in our area. Thank you to the Waterloo Region Labour Council for putting this event on this year. The International Day of Mourning event brings us together online this year to remember the men and women who have perished as a result of workplace accident or industrial disease. We fight for the living, we mourn the dead. This year is particularly poignant as we've been faced with the realities of COVID-19. The ramifications of this pandemic are going to change how we deal with business and how business deals with its workers for years to come. It doesn't matter if you're in construction, healthcare, food service, or any other essential sector. We need our workers to be safe, to have access to proper cleaning supplies, sanitizer, and PPE in order to avoid catching or passing on this virus. If you're an employer, you need to ensure that this is being done on your job site or workplace. If you're a worker, remember that you have the right to refuse unsafe work. Try to resolve any issues with management, but if you can't resolve a safety shortfall, please remember that you can file a report with the Ministry of Labour or with your unionized rep. This is how change happens, and the change is happening is up to us. For our general public, usually in the past, I've urged you to reach out to our political partners to find out what they are doing to keep workers safe. This year, the message is straightforward. Stay home if you can, and if you can't, keep your travel to a minimum. It's that simple, and this is how we flatten that curve and beat this thing. I'll leave you with this last comment. If you are traveling, slow down, especially in construction zones. Those are our members out there working on those job sites, and they want to come home safe at the end of the day as much as you do. Thank you for your time, and keep safe.
So we've decided to do things a little bit differently. We can't assemble like we normally do for our Day of Mourning ceremonies. So we've decided this year that we're going to invite some people from our community to sit on a panel with us, and we're going to have a panel discussion today. We have three members of our community. First of all, we have Emily Coulter, who is a PSW full-time, who is a member of Unifor 1106. We also have Lisa Main, who is a member of Unifor 4304 with Grand River Transit, who is also a VP and Health and Safety Coordinator. And we have Lauren Bruce with us today, who's an executive member with United Food and Commercial Workers 175633, who also is a retail store worker in our community. How's everybody doing today?
Good.
We're good. Good. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to be asking a few questions based on the COVID-19, based on your experiences in your workplace outside of COVID-19, and how this pandemic and other things in your workplace have affected your situation now and in the past. Okay, so we will start with some questions, and I will start with Emily. I'm going to post the question and then everybody can answer, but I'll start with Emily first. If you need me to redo the question, just let me know, and I'd be more than happy to do that for you. Okay? Okay. The Day of Mourning is about raising awareness around how many workers have been impacted by injury and illness in the workplace. So often that sometimes could be even prevention of illness and injury from happening in the first place. Share with us your connection with this topic and what it means in your workplace. Emily, you're up.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you for having me. The Day of Mourning is, to me and to my workplace, is a time to remember our fallen ones that got injured or have passed away due to death or injury in the workplace. It's also a time to remember the members that are affected by these tragedies. And it's also a time to reflect on how we can all be injured on the workplace daily.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good. Lisa, what does the Day of Mourning mean to you?
Can I just say ditto?
You can, yeah, but
the Day of Mourning like she said, it's about remembering and reflecting, keeping in our thoughts and prayers all of the people that have lost their lives and their family members that they've left behind. It's a good time for us as health and safety people to look through our programs and our policies and procedures and make sure that everything hasn't gotten compliant and we're all up to speed, to prevent any workplace injuries in the future.
Mm-hmm. Good. Lauren, how about you?
Well, again, Kelly, thanks for the invite. Every year we mark this day, and it's important to highlight some of the issues that some people in the province don't necessarily hear about. In my industry, we're not like severe injury like somebody in a construction site or whatnot, but we do have long-standing issues with how WSIB is run and repetitive strain and whatnot, and the fight we have every day with our employer and the province.
And sometimes that is a fight. And I think that goes with a lot of places of employment, a lot of workers, a lot of places where people work. Okay, the next question. As an essential worker during this pandemic, we're going to talk a little bit about COVID-19 in the pandemic, not only in this region, but how it affects people in the province and the country, and kind of some of the things that are happening in the world that affect us here in Waterloo region. So as an essential worker, during this pandemic, and each one of us has been deemed an essential worker in one parameter or another from the provincial government. What does the day of mourning mean to you when you're looking at the pandemic and COVID-19?
The day of mourning really gives us the opportunity to remember those who've lost, think about our healthcare workers that are definitely the front line. There's been a few of them lost to this pandemic, which is tragic. Gives us the opportunity to, like I said before, to pray about the people that are in the hospital alone, missing their families. It brings to light the stresses and fears that the frontline workers have with the limited PPEs that we have.
Yeah. Do you
That's
think
it.
maybe, I'll get to the others in a moment. Do you think maybe this year with the pandemic and COVID-19, the day of mourning is it's very current, obviously, in the times that we're living in, and some of the workers that are working on the front line. Do you think this year might be very valid and a very important time to talk about health and safety risks and things like that on the job?
It's always a valid time to talk about health and safety risks on the job. But now in particular, because of the lack of PPEs that we all have, it's a huge risk to people's safety. It's a huge risk to their health. Because Canada isn't self-sufficient in preparing PPEs for our communities, we're relying on other countries, and it's pretty scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are in this region starting to really see businesses step up manufacturing and things like that, to make face shields and the sterilizers. Have you seen the UV sterilizers that a company here in Waterloo is actually starting to make? So we are kind of getting there as far as the region is concerned. I love the fact that some of these places are retooling to do some of these things. So it's pretty cool. Let's move to Lauren. Lauren, what does this mean to you in the pandemic and the day of mourning, being a frontline grocery worker?
Well, I think it highlights that how unprepared we were. Even though we have government modeling and we have reviews after the SARS, for example, the term essential workers is a legislative term for certain segments of the economy. But, and again, my union represents many of our different sectors of the economy, but I'll speak about retail workers in specific. And I don't think that the attention was given to what we go through. And if I can put it in perspective a little bit, almost every disaster, you've got to keep the hydro plants working, you've got to keep the hospitals up and running, but you also have to have the grocery stores and the pharmacies up and running. So it's not a big surprise. However, to put it in context, the kind of volume of the general public that we deal with, I reached out to one of our affiliates in the States, and one of our New Jersey stores in the very early days of the pandemic had 10,000 customers go through the doors in one day. Wow. Now wrap your head around
That's
that
crazy.
for a second. And the fact you have to remember there's no PPE, there's no social distancing, there's just an onslaught, a stampede of people coming through the doors to buy things. You know, we talk about hoarding buying, but it was sheer volume of people. And we were dealing with it here in Canada and here in Ontario and here in Waterloo as well. And, you know, people were talking about toilet paper and I'm running around talking about PPE. You know, how are we protecting our people? Like, we're just getting overwhelmed here. The day that the provincial government announced that they were going to close the schools is when it really kicked off. And for 4 days straight, it was just nonstop wall-to-wall people. So, you know, what was the priority there? And again, I go back to past pandemics and modeling and emergency response and being prepared. And it didn't seem like, you know, even though we're not essential, we're front line, and you know it's going to come down the pipe, and yet I didn't see the response, and not nearly quick enough.
And I think you're right. I think that happened in most sectors. I think that most governments were caught off guard. I think that, you know, there have been 25 years of cuts across the board in this province by different governments. And, you know, we had an opportunity with the Ford government in 2018 when they were elected to make some changes, and they chose not to do that. So, you know, I think 25 years of cutbacks and clawbacks and underfunding of our healthcare system and long-term care and, you know, PSWs and, you know, our frontline workers. I mean, we're all considered frontline workers now. And it's amazing that the frontline workers that are working out there now, most of them are women. No offense, Lauren, but, you know, most of them are women, and they're in jobs that, you know, traditionally are thought of as minimum wage jobs. So, you know, we'll get to that question in a couple of minutes. I actually want to ask people one question about wages. So we'll kind of zip back to that one. But Emily, what are your thoughts on this? What does the day of mourning mean to you in this pandemic? And this strikes a little bit close to you, I think.
It affects the morale for staff. It affects, you know, you see your coworkers test positive, you see your residents fall ill, you fall ill yourself. It's taken a toll on everyone. PTSD for most of us. Our mental health is being tested. This pandemic has really brought out like the humanity in all of us.
I think all of us have a different way or a different thing to look at as far as the day of mourning in the pandemic. This is certainly something that, you know, it's unprecedented. It's been 102 years since we've seen anything, you know, like this. And we certainly economically, we're not in the position that we're in right now. So, you know, 102 years ago, basically was you know, the big pandemic. And like I said, things have changed. I don't know. I think we've lost a lot of people that we, you know, certainly shouldn't have lost. But anyways, okay, we'll go to the next question. If you all can share with us the impact that this pandemic has had on your everyday work life, as well as your personal life. So in saying that, I know that, you know, when we go to work, we have a different way of being during the day. And then when we come home, it's completely different on a normal basis. So when you go to work and you know that you're working in an environment where you could actually contract COVID-19, how does that affect you in your workplace? How do you look at that? And then when you bring that home, how do you look at that when you're with your family? And Lisa, we'll start with you if that's okay.
How do I deal with it? Well, everybody in the workplace is under tremendous stress. Everybody's worried. Everybody's concerned. In my particular job, we're on a bus, which is, it's about 40 feet, but it's a long metal tube. We have countless people come on our buses. Social distancing would probably be about 10 people on a bus. We have a limit of 20 right now. The employer's not ready to go to 10. Me personally, I deal with the stress of the 750 employees that are in our local. I worry about them. I worry about their families. A lot of them have people with immune deficiencies or underlying issues that could be very tragic if they were to get the COVID. I worry about mental health of our members. I worry about the mental health of my family, my friends. We miss our family and friends because we don't often get to see them. My daughter, I haven't seen in months. It's very stressful at home and at work.
Lauren, how about you?
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of Lisa's comments. You know, our folks are very stressed. There's for all the really good things that are out there with people and how they talk to us, there's also the abusive side. I mean, people have read the reports coming out of Guelph, a very, very unfortunate incident. So we have an increased volume of sales, and we're actually down about 25% of staff that are off for various reasons. So they're worried about their families. And Kelly, you're talking about, we as union representatives in the workplace, that we worry about our members and we talk to them and their stress levels and try and fix problems as we go along and help them out. But personally, I know day of mourning I like to reflect on and my own personal situation, and what impacts me is when we have guest speakers and they tell their personal story. A lot of our folks didn't think they were in a frontline position until they were confronted with it. And like others, I have my two children have underlying immune issues, so I haven't been able to hug them or see them for 2 months. I had to tell them right away, you know what, you're not going to see me for a while. And then I had to do something that I felt that was necessary, and I mean we all should do it, but I felt a sense of urgency, and I made sure that my papers were up to date, and I had to have that talk with my children about being the executor of my estate and how that would happen. That's a tough thing to do as a dad.
Okay, Emily. Do you want me to repeat that?
Yes.
What does the day of
You've
mourning
been
mean to
cutting
you
up.
in this
It's been
pandemic?
cutting up so much. The day of mourning in this pandemic means new hurdles to overcome, new ways to deal with this pandemic. Being a frontline worker, we should have known and learned a lot from our previous pandemics, SARS and everything else. And I feel like we could have done better. We need to remember our frontline workers.
So, Emily, I'm just going to expand on that a little bit. How does this affect your everyday work life, and how does this affect your personal life as a PSW?
Well, going into work, it's changed everything. From walking in those doors to putting PPE on to praying to God that you don't get it. Then coming in contact with it and getting the virus, and then having to come home and get tested and test positive. I've had to be separated from my family. That's a hard thing to do when you have to explain to your 5-year-old that you can't give hugs or kisses, or I can't help you with your homework, or you can't come and see me. I've had to rely on family members and my husband a lot. That's new in our house. He's taken on the role of caregiver and provider and mom and dad. It's just changed the dynamic of our family quite a bit for me not being there.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you are in what day of quarantine now?
Day 12.
Okay. And how are you feeling?
Today is a good day. It's slowly getting better. Last week was horrible, but today I feel a lot better.
Good. Well, we're glad you're better. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. The next question, it's horrible I think it's horrible when you find out that, I would think it would be horrible if you find out that you are COVID-19 positive, or that people around you are COVID-19 positive. I think that has a really relevant thing when you take that home and you're with your family. I know that it doesn't matter what workplace you're in. If you're in touch and you're dealing with the public and you're out there, you definitely have the chance to catch COVID-19, regardless of what's going on. So we all need to be very, very careful. Okay. The next question: what impact do you think this pandemic will have on the workplace health and safety in the long term? What do you think companies are going to do going forward with health and safety? And how do you think this is going to impact the workers long term, especially the workers that are seeing their co-workers going off with COVID-19 and being off for long periods of time? Lauren, let's start with you.
Well, boy, That's a tough question because
It's a
at
big
this
one.
point our industry is in flux. I look at long term. I have to look at how we got to this point. So prior to the pandemic, we were fighting tooth and nail with our employer for 2 sick pay days for a year for our people, and we were in arbitration for 22 months over it for 2 days, and we lost. And I was part of the lobbying effort for the 15 and Fairness campaign. My employer was on the other side of the lobbying against it. So I'm relatively optimistic that there's a new perspective from our employer about what our people do, because we're proud of serving our community, and and we really appreciate the media attention, the hero thing and all that sort of stuff. But it's our day-to-day stuff that we have to fight for nickels and dimes, and just a living wage for our folks, and a healthy environment. And we shouldn't have to fight those fights. Every contract we have to fight over safety shoes. Like, really? So again, the glass half full of me is hoping that those conversations are a little bit easier and we can talk about larger issues in the industry. But we'll see. But I'm going to
So,
continue
Lauren,
to
let me
hold
ask you this.
their feet to the fire, and also the legislatures of this world, the provincial and federal and municipal, right? And get those folks to understand the plight of our industry.
So let me ask you this. Lauren, do you think in the environment and the climate that we're in right now, knowing that some employers have given danger pay, if you want to call it that, or they've given an increase of $2 or $5 or whatever the employer, whatever the government has decided to do to give, and they've taken notice that frontline workers right now are generally minimum wage workers, and they've increased their wages to keep them on the front line, to keep them working. Do you think that we'll be able to maintain that? And what do you think the new normal will look like when the dust settles? Because I have some pretty strong opinions on that. I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I agree, Kelly. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. Our UFCW, through our international whatnot, we saw that $2 an hour danger pay, or Doctors Without Borders paid, whatever you want to call it. And it went right through the industry all across North America. Actually, some of the chains in the States did the same thing. They knew they were going to lose people. Like I said, we lost 25% of our workforce almost within a few weeks. So for them to turn around and say, well, you're not essential enough anymore, or your work's not, you're really important for a while, but not so much now, it'll be a real hard conversation for them to have. And, I'm not sure how much public perception will play into that, but maybe it will, right? We talk about all our we talk to all the minimum wage workers or whatnot that are keeping things going, right? It's the CEO from working from home is not keeping the economy working. It's folks like
You're
us,
exactly
bus
right.
drivers, it's the healthcare professionals, and so we'll see.
You're right. Okay, Lisa, how do you think? And because you're a health and safety chair, this question actually is very relevant for you. How do you think this pandemic in the workplace is going to change health and safety long term, and how do you think it's going to affect your members?
I think it's going to change in the long term. This is a situation that none of us were prepared for. We have a lot of new policies and procedures put in place, a lot of PPEs that we've never had before available to us. I think in the long term, it's going to prepare us for any kind of situation that we might run into in the future. As far as our members are concerned, it's kind of a difficult thing. The grocery stores, I look at them a whole new way now. I mean, good for them for standing there and putting up with what they put up with and working the long hours they work. For us, it's a little bit different. We're facing layoffs because we don't have the work because of the pandemic. We've already laid off our part-time employees, and we're looking at laying off full-time next. Hopefully not, but that could be very possible. The wage, We did not ask for a wage increase. We are not minimum wage employees, but I do totally agree and respect that the minimum wage employees, grocery store clerks, they deserve the extra money. They deserve more than what they got. What was the second part of your question?
How do you think this will affect workers long term? I know it's kind of a long-winded question.
It was a long-winded answer.
So in the long run, when the dust settles and we take a look at what we did right, what we did wrong, and what we didn't do at all, the health and safety aspects of how the employer implemented health and safety in the workplace, pre-COVID-19 and post-COVID-19, I think are going to look really different. So you've touched a little bit on it, but how do you think your workers are going to see health and safety in the workplace after this whole thing is all over?
I honestly feel that our workers are feeling underappreciated right now by the employers' cooperation. It's been a very hard fight to get the protection that we've gotten so far, and we continue to fight to get what we need for protection. I don't think that's going to change after the pandemic. I think it's always going to be a fight. We're frontline workers. We face the public every day. We need the protection, and they're just not willing to give us the protection we require.
Do you think, Lisa, that moving forward, a lot of people are talking about a second wave, and I think depending on what the government does as far as opening the province again or opening the country or opening the region, if they do it in large steps or small steps, people are talking about a second wave. Do you think that the region, and let's just talk about the region for a second. Do you think the region is going to be prepared for a second wave if this happens with the bus drivers? And do you think the bus drivers would have their expectations up that the region would be prepared?
I think the region will be prepared, even though they've been slow. They are starting to provide for us. They're looking at getting us masks. We are allowed to wear masks, but they're not provided at this point. They have just gotten a shipment of Purell hand sanitizer, so every driver will have their own bottle. So moving forward, they are starting to get what we need. So I think if there's a second wave, I think we'll be prepared for a second wave.
Awesome. That's awesome. Emily, what do you think about that? So in the workplace and health and safety, I know that health and safety as a PSW is huge. How do you think after this is all, after this is done, what do you think the impact is going to be for you and for your colleagues moving forward with health and safety in the workplace? Because I know PSWs in themselves have been on the front line. They've been compromised as well with no PPE and having to go in several locations without the proper protection. So how do you think your colleagues are going to react when everything is all said and done, or even in the near future with health and safety?
I think there's going to be a lot of change in policy and procedures, that's for sure. I think we're gonna advocate more for ourselves because we're relying heavily on what the employer was saying regarding if we needed PPE or not. And I know a lot of us were bringing in our own. So I think the change with this would be we're going to advocate more, and we're going to see more use of that PPE from now on.
So do you think that workers are educating themselves as well as employers trying to educate? Do you think that the PSWs are definitely coming together and educating themselves as to what they need and what's exactly happening in the long-term care facilities?
Oh, absolutely. We're no longer standing by and waiting for anyone to make that call for us, because so many of us have gone through this and tested positive, and we knew that had we advocated for ourselves, we wouldn't have been in this position. That given is that we did follow recommendations from public health and all of that, but I think we're going to see a lot more PSWs, healthcare frontline workers advocating for the right to use those PPEs.
And that's always a good thing. That's awesome. Good. Okay. So we're in the midst of this pandemic, and I know that we may not have the full picture of exactly what has occurred and what's going on. As I said before, the testing numbers that they're putting up provincially and even regionally aren't actual true numbers. And that's because they're not testing regular, ordinary people. They've just started this past Monday, or I don't even know what date that was, started testing frontline workers, so grocery store workers and liquor store and retail. Anybody who's showing signs can go and get tested, which is something that wasn't happening before. So I know that we don't have the full picture of what's happening just yet, and we might not for quite some time. However, where do you think our government could have done a better job preparing for this pandemic? And Lauren, I'm going to go straight to you.
All right, to lean over to listen in. Where should our government go with that? Well, I think we have to revisit the commission that was set up after the SARS epidemic and see those recommendations and how much they were implemented. I don't see any reason why we can't have a stockpile of PPE in warehousing here in Ontario or across the country for these kinds of situations. I think that, like I said, we were caught flat-footed, and it was the Wild West out there, and it was just our healthcare situation was better than most countries because of the SARS experience, and there was protocol in there. There still was shortages of PPE and whatnot. I totally agree with that. But there's talk of the second wave, and they're talking about, in conjunction with the flu season, and we could see even a worst case scenario. I really hope to heck that during the discussions about opening up the province or opening up the county or jurisdiction or whatnot, that labor representatives and health and safety representatives are at the table. It's not just business talking to government about how to implement, gradual changes of openings and or setting protocol for the next wave or the next occurrence. I think we need our people there to have a voice for the frontline workers and say, okay, here's what worked, and here's what didn't work, and here's what we need to do moving forward. Because if we don't have those voices there, I'm concerned that we're going to run into the same issues or something unforeseen that, that's not on their radar, but it's on ours.
Well, I have a feeling that we're going to have some people on the front line talking to the government that aren't normally sitting at that table. So I know that there are a lot of groups out there, and me being the president of the Labor Council, I'm one of them. We're loading up that war chest. We want to know exactly, what went wrong, why we're sitting in the position that we're in, and whether it's one government's fault or it's 10 governments' faults. What did we do? What didn't we do? And why didn't we do it sooner? Considering, this first came to light in January. So I totally agree with you, Lauren. Lisa, what do you think about that? What do you think our government could have done to better prepare for this pandemic?
I think that our government relies too much on other countries. We have the manpower, we have the knowledge. Clearly, there's lots of companies, like you said earlier, that have stepped up and started making PPEs and sanitizers. They've revamped their whole company to provide these services. I don't see a need for our country to be going to other countries to get this sort of thing: masks, gloves, sanitizers, respirators. We should be making those in Canada, and we should be using them in Canada.
So I know that traditionally, we're always looking for the cheapest price. We're always looking for the best deal. We're always looking for, more for less. And unfortunately, when we're talking about things like that, we're talking about imports. We're talking about things that come from China and things that come from overseas. So, in retrospect, in saying that we're now producing our own hand sanitizer and our own shields and things like that, do you think that is sustainable moving forward after the pandemic has kind of settled down a little bit? Do you think that we're going to be able to maintain that?
I think it's sustainable. Whether or not our governments are going to want to spend the extra money to keep it here, I hope they've learned a lesson from all this. I do remember hearing Ford say, "Never again will we rely on another country," and I hope he remembers he said that. Yes, the price is a little more, but our lives are worth it.
I hope the government knows that at the end of the day, honestly. Okay, Emily, what do you think about this? What do you think the government could have done? And I'm telling you, I mean, if there's anybody on this call right now that should be talking about this, I think it's you as a PSW. What do you think this government could have done better to prepare for this pandemic, because they've literally put you right in the face of it.
Well, we absolutely do feel let down. We feel like we were led to feel safe, and we weren't, absolutely. They could have done a better job in screening, closing the borders. They could have prepared us with PPE. There's so many things that they could have done. But for us in long-term care, we're overworked, underpaid, undervalued. We seem to be the last one to get the correct information to protect ourselves. So, speaking from personally, I feel like I was let down, and it's emotional. I feel like I could have used that PPE earlier.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree. And we're glad that you're safe. And we're seeing the PPE coming into long-term care. We're seeing the PPE starting to come into the retail sector as well. Sometimes a little too late, right? Too slow, too slow on the draw. Whether that was a shortage in materials or shortage in whatever, we can all point it back to, cuts. It's all about the cuts. So, and I will continue to visit that over and over and over again. So, okay. So, two big questions right at the very end of this. And I want you to think really long and hard on this one, because I can't answer it, and I would really love to. What message would you like the general public to hear right now from you, from your perspective, where you sit in your job and in your seat right now? And we'll start with Emily.
I want the general public to know that we can do better for our seniors. We should do better for our seniors. We can do better for our frontline staff. They're not essential just today, they're essential every single day. Let's work harder on fixing this problem.
That's awesome. Lisa, what do you think? What do you want the general public to hear right now? That was a great answer.
It was. I would like the general public to know to stay home unless you need to go to a medical appointment, unless you need to get something essential at the grocery store, unless you need to go to work. Stay home. It's not just your life you're saving, it's other people's lives as well. Just stay home. Stay off the buses.
Very good advice. Very good. Yeah, we'd love to see everybody out working, but we'd like to see everybody alive too. So yeah, absolutely. Lauren, what do you think about this? General public, what do you want them to hear? Be nice.
Well, come on in. We got a sale on toilet paper next week. I'm kidding.
Seems to be the
thing. I just want the general public to, show our folks some kindness and respect. They're under a lot of stress. We're doing the best we can. So, we don't need the incidents of abuse that we've seen. And we know this could be a longer duration than people may realize. This could be on for months. This could be the new normal. So, bear with it. The folks on the front line don't make the decisions. They may have to enforce some company policies, but they're not the ones in charge of inventory levels. They're not the ones doing the ordering. They have no idea how the delivery systems work and when we get things and whatnot. So, don't take it out on them. I mean, like I said before, we're proud to serve our community. Our people are good at what they do, and we're all in this together.
Absolutely. Well said. Good job. And I actually echo that with the general public in everything that all of you have said. Patty Hadju said something very moving in one of the sessions, and I actually took this and put it on social media. If we all stand still, if we all stay home, this virus will die. The virus needs a host. And if we stay home and we don't allow the virus to penetrate a host, it will die. And I know that's very hard to do because we do have frontline workers, and we do have other things that need to be done in our society to keep it running. So, but if for the majority, if we just stay still, if we stay home, we will get through this, and it shouldn't take 18 months or however long it's going to take, and of course nobody knows that answer. So the last question I think that I want to ask everybody, and it's this one here. I have some things that I would like to say, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it to everybody else. What is it that you would like your elected officials to hear right now? And I know that some of them are listening, and I know that some of them are not. And we won't point them out just yet. But what would you like the elected officials, be it municipal, provincial, or federal, what would you like elected officials to hear right now about what's going on and what you think they need to know? Lisa, you're up.
Oh, don't start with me on this one.
Okay, Lauren.
I know that was going to come my way.
You're all going to answer it.
Yeah, I have a very strong message for the elected officials. I hope you certainly don't think you're going to go into an austerity mode after this is all said and done. I hope you have a new appreciation for the social safety net that we built in Canada and in Ontario over the last decades and decades of hard work of progressive activists like myself and others. And, all we have to look is to our neighbors to the south to see what happens when you don't have that social safety net. So I know right now the money that's being poured in to help individuals, businesses, and all the rest of it is kind of being borrowed. But, careful, because we have long memories. We know what certain governments, conservative governments, were doing prior to this pandemic. And I hope they have a new appreciation for, our PSWs and our LTC, health long-term care. I think, we have to fundamentally change how that operates and a new respect for healthcare. And so when we start looking at austerity programs, when they're looking at cutting at health and education and social programs, they have a new appreciation for it.
Very good. Emily, what do you think? What do you want your elected officials to hear from you about what your experiences are and what's happening right now?
I would like to tell them that we're tired of lip service, for sure.
That's awesome.
It's time for change. It's time for change. It's time for change now. I can't stress that enough, especially in long-term care. It's every government saying that they're going to do something, and we are left holding the bag on this with frontline staff being, overworked, underpaid, underappreciated. I can't stress that enough. We need permanent change. We need change right now.
That's awesome. Yes, we absolutely do. We absolutely do. Lisa, you ready to answer this one? It's a big question.
It's a big question. I'd like to go back to the healthcare. Please, the government needs to send people in to help these healthcare workers. I don't know a lot about it, but I do watch on the news the struggles that they're facing. They need help. One of the nursing homes in Kitchener-Waterloo, they're sending people to different hospitals because they're so overworked and overcrowded. These people need help.
I have a lot to say to elected officials myself. I think I will echo what everybody else said and kind of leave it at that. I think that we definitely need to keep all of these things top of mind as we move through to the next election, whether that be municipal, provincial, or federal. I think all eyes are on all levels of government, and especially when it comes to the health and safety of workers. And this is what the Day of Mourning is all about, right? It's about health and safety of workers, and it's about people going to work healthy and coming home healthy to their families. And not coming home with, occupational or industrial diseases and things like that. So, and the pandemic is absolutely no different. If there's a pandemic, which we're in right now, we would expect that there would be provisions there to protect workers. And we've seen, in just the three industries that we have here, that certainly was not the case. So, the government certainly did get caught with their pants down. And, hopefully we won't have a second round. But if we do, hopefully that, the government is definitely more prepared, and so is each and every employer in this province, in this region, in this country. So, only time will tell. On that note, is there anything that anybody else wants to say in regards to Day of Mourning, if that's, pre-pandemic right now, or, kind of moving forward? Is there anybody that has anything else they'd like to add? This is your time.
Sure, Kelly.
Nobody? Okay,
Kelly?
Lauren, go ahead.
Yeah, overall, I'd like to thank the Labor Council and the work that we do. This is a very important day for us in the calendar year. And I know we usually have a large group, a large crowd at whether it's the city of Kitchener, city of Waterloo, or city of Cambridge, and we have elected officials from all levels of government. Different social services come and people share their stories, and it's a hugely important to the workers of our region. And so, I mean, for us to throw this together, a shout out to our technician Jeff, our producer in the background, who's going to put all this together. And so thanks, Kelly.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming on our panel today. I know that this is very, very different than what we usually and normally do. We're hoping that we reach a lot more people, more of our members, not only in the region, but outside of the region as well, because I think everybody had something very, very important to say. Each of us works in a different sector. Each of us has our own challenges. Each of us has a different perspective on, how things were handled, and even moving forward, where we're going to be going over the next couple weeks, the next couple months, moving into the end of 2020, and kind of what the entire year looks like. So I want to thank everybody for coming on. I know that sometimes it's a little emotional talking about your workplaces and the things that you're seeing in your workplaces with your coworkers and things like that. So I want to thank each and every one of you for coming on. And I hope that everybody stays safe. Emily, I hope you're feeling much, much better.
Thank you.
And if anybody has any questions or anything, please feel free to reach out to myself or anybody on the council. We certainly don't have all the answers, but we certainly will work towards getting them. So again, I want to thank everybody for being on our panel today. Everybody was completely awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Kelly.
As we wrap up the day today, I'd like to leave you with one thing. We are only as strong as our weakest link. And when we ensure that all workers are trained properly and are aware of their rights, we not only protect them, but we protect ourselves. And this pandemic has definitely brought that to light. So let's make sure that every worker that leaves for work comes home safely to their families and their loved ones. I thank you very much for joining us on behalf of the Waterloo Region Labour Council. Please stay safe.